Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny,
And I'm Alice.
and this is episode 164. All right, everybody, welcome back. So we have Alice on the channel. What was the last podcast you were on? Like, what were we talking about?
Ooh, I don't even remember.
I know you were on. I just can't remember what exactly we were talking about. But anyway, I'm happy that we have you back. So it is just starting to get warm here. How is it where you are?
I can't make up its mind. It's Virginia. That's normal. So we'll have a couple of days of warm and then a couple of days it's right back to winter. And eh, it's fine. I like to change up the wardrobe. Some people, it annoys so much, but I'm like, you just get all the various seasons, like jumping around. You get to wear all the different clothes. I'm not going to
Mhm.
complain.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it would get warm. But today I was like, "Giacomo, is it like extra cold in here today?" And he was like, "It is extra cold in here." And then I went outside and I was like, "I think it's warmer outside than it is in our house right now." So, hopefully this is a sign of good things to come because we were like flooded for like the last 2 weeks here. So miserable. We have what we call fake spring here in
Mhm.
Massachusetts. It's this week usually where it's like gorgeous outside and everybody is like, it's here. And then Mother Nature's like, psych. And then we got snow. Um,
Oof.
terrible,
Snow
terrible.
is a four-letter word for me. I cannot.
Yeah.
Ugh. But it's
Yeah.
because we don't get snow. Well, if we get snow here, then it's so little and it doesn't stick. When it does stick, the whole world shuts down. And even then, it's only a couple inches. And so I just, ooh, I hate it.
Yeah. I always like the first snow. And then after that, I'm over it.
Yeah.
Um, but also, it was just Easter. Did you do anything fun for Easter?
Just went to go visit with my family. We wanted to go to Busch Gardens, but it just didn't work out. But it was great. It was great seeing my family. And when dinner was done, I went out with my sister and we went and played Pokemon Go for like
Mhm.
hours and hours and hours.
That sounds super fun, actually, to me. Um, I got this crazy idea in my head on Friday night. The kids were here this weekend, and I was like, what can I do for them that would be like fun? Usually I go into every weekend with a plan of something fun we can do, but I didn't have anything this weekend. And then on Friday night, I was like, I have an idea. I'll like make an escape room slash scavenger hunt for them
Oh,
all over the house. And I spent all day Saturday making it, and it was like super, super cool. And it
that's
ended
awesome.
at, like in the shed with them getting bikes. So they were,
Oh,
yeah, I was very pleased with myself. I don't often do stuff just for the sake of doing it, just because it's fun. Like if it's not productive, it feels like a waste of time for me sometimes. So I was really proud of myself for doing something just because it sounded fun. So,
were the bikes like new bikes?
mhm.
What a fun
Yeah.
like way to do like an Easter gift. And it's right before spring. That's so timely. And that's so that was a good idea.
Yeah, it was super fun, except Daisy's flat front tire was flat, and I couldn't fix it because
Oh,
everything was closed, so, I was, like, duct taping the tube and trying to blow it up. I'll get it fixed, though. She was still excited.
yeah.
So this episode is actually a requested episode, so Alice just wrapped up her prep, new Bikini Pro with the OCB. Congratulations, very, very exciting.
Thank you.
Um, and you had made some posts on Instagram, like some reels about how your prep was easy and smooth because of the setup and things like that.
Mhm.
And some people were like, "Hey, I want to hear both sides of this because I have heard both sides of this from like other people, but I thought it would be a really interesting discussion to have because we're both kind of coming at prep from the same sort of philosophies.
Mhm.
So to see even with the same philosophies, like how different they could be, I think is interesting and people want to know. So first of all, how was your overall prep experience if you want to elaborate on that?
Well, it started out like I said, it started out I thought this is going too easy. When is it going to get hard? My body was primed for weight loss. We had been trying to gain for so long. And at that point, my body was resisting gaining anymore. So that had gotten a little bit frustrating. My strength was continuing to go up, but otherwise, weight was not budging. And so it's like body was super happy. to put things in reverse. And I had so much support from my boyfriend, who is also like a vegan musclehead. He knows how to cook and he knows how to cook high protein. He makes
Mhm.
his own mock meats. It's amazing that I found him. And so I've been getting a lot of support from him, getting, oh my gosh, it was great. Everything was going so well. It wasn't until probably like a week or two before my first competition of this season that it started to get really difficult to see changes. The scale wasn't necessarily moving, but body fat was changing.
Mhm.
And finally got the tie-ins to show. I had a lot of stress about my tie-ins not coming in, not showing in time. But I had to learn to chill out about that.
Mhm. It's hard. Everybody has a spot. Everybody has a spot that they are just like laser focused on it happening.
Exactly.
So,
But I got there and I got super lean for, I'd say, 2 out of 4 of the competitions and got very close in the third. It was really just one competition out of this season that was really a struggle and really couldn't see hams or tie-ins very well at all. But it was
mhm.
at the tail end. It was my last show.
Mhm. And your
um,
first pro show
yeah,
also, and you still
yes,
placed.
I
So,
still placed.
yeah.
But
Well, I
overall,
mean,
things
it
were
seemed like
still
an
great.
overall good experience for a first prep. Um, I would say unusual, like just from having coached so many people through competition preps that it's unusual for it to kind of be that smooth. I mean, some of that is of your own doing, some of that is because of how much you did nail the off season. Like
Mhm.
you weren't estimating your food in the off season, you weren't kind of half-assing stuff in the off season, like you were super dedicated all the way through that. And I think that was part of it. And then the other part of it, I think, is just people genetically being different from one another, which I don't on the one hand, I think people use genetics as a way to sort of limit themselves, I guess is the best way to put it, or justify why certain things aren't happening. Like I certainly see people doing that who are not giving it their all. They're like, well, genetics. Um, when maybe if they were just a little bit more disciplined or fine-tuned, they might get further. But also, there are definitely genetic differences between people and like where their bodies kind of want to be, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Um,
Certainly
so
high level of dedication because I have OCD personality disorder. And it's almost an obsession, it's almost a problem sometimes.
mhm,
So almost too far in the other direction. And as far as I don't know if it's necessarily genetics, but I blame like my health conditions.
mhm,
Um, because if you look at the rest of my family, they're all either average to overweight to obese,
mhm,
honestly. Uh, it depends on the person.
right.
So that's a little harder to peg down, I
Yeah,
guess.
it is harder to peg down, and your lifestyle, like growing up, I think also plays a big role, sort of regardless of somebody's genetics. Like if they grew up very active, I think that that really pays off later in life versus if
Mm,
somebody grew up really sedentary. I think that
for sure.
also shows up later in life. Um, so I guess if we're gonna sort of compare our prep, so obviously yours is very recent. Mine was the last one I did was in 2018. So I had to like literally dig through the archives to find the information of like how long it was and um, my starting weight and my ending weight and all like my starting calories and ending calories and what was I doing for cardio, et cetera. So not all of this is fresh in my mind, but I remember the feeling like that is still burned, like seared into my memory what it felt like. So that point you were talking about where like, okay, you felt your body turn that corner, right? Like you felt when it happened.
It was a hard corner. Yes.
I mine started to turn that corner, I guess, in June, and my first show was in September.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it was and my last show was in November. So I spent about 5 months in
Mm.
that place,
Wow.
and it was ugly, like, it did get really ugly, um, in terms of my mood, my sleep, my energy, my strength certainly as well. My mindset, you can't stay like that for very long and not have your mindset sort of take a hit. But, like you, I was just like laser focused on getting there. Like I knew what I wanted to do, I knew what I wanted to accomplish. So I did it. I did everything I was supposed to do. Um, but it felt like death after a certain point?
Now, since you had, longer time frames between shows, did you have sort of like a little bit of a calorie increase and then, cut back down, or did you just maintain the entire time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually had 1, 2, 3 diet breaks before June. So I started on January 1st. This was a 48-week prep, like from
Wow.
start to finish. Um, and I had 3 diet breaks. So one was 10 days, one was 7 days, and one was 9 days. So that's just like basically a full week of high days uh, in that time. So that helped throughout. One, mentally it helped, but after that point, there were no more. But I did always have refeed days in. And because I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shows in that period, um, I had 5 peak weeks. So I had 5 like carb up situations as well that is kind of like a little mini diet break, kind of.
Mhm.
So and then right going into the very last show, we did start to walk my calories back up, for which I was incredibly grateful.
I bet. It's a long
Um,
time.
yeah, I was looking at yours. Actually, I didn't look at this part. While you explain it, I will go and double check. But um, why don't you talk about like sort of where you started your prep, like weight wise and calorie wise, and where you ended it?
Yeah, so we had done we started early November after Plant Built Vegan Strong um, competition in Mr. America. And we started there. My weight was 132. And first competition of the season was February the 3rd. And stage weight was hovering around 122. Um, Before that, I had had a series of mini cuts and just sort of lull time frames in between. But like my highest point and my bulk where I could not gain any more weight was about 141 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else did you ask? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's super helpful. So your highest weight was 141. We kind of did a diet before the diet before going into prep.
Mhm.
So you started your prep 9 pounds lower than your heaviest weight in the off season, right?
Right.
I get that right? Okay. And then you ended well, your first show you said was 122. So, you're like, stage weight kinda changes from show to show a little bit, but it was around 122, right?
Mhm.
Um, so if we look at the total from the height of the off season, I guess, to your stage weight, that's 19 pounds. But because of that little diet before the diet, it ended up being sort of 10 pounds in 12 weeks, give or take,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. And I just looked to see like what kind of changes we made throughout prep, how many changes we made throughout prep. Uh, I believe we made 3 changes, and one of them was to cut cardio out completely. So we'll talk more about that later. But diet changes, we only really made 2 diet changes throughout, which is pretty impressive for
Right.
um, that span of time to only have to do that. So, I mean, you're completely right. Like your body was like totally 100% ready for this. And I think a lot of that did have to do with the fact that you were pushing the limits of how much your body could eat, how much your body could gain, which is the part that I think most people, but especially women, are like not willing to do. If you want to speak to that, because I've talked about it ad nauseum why it's important, but maybe hearing it from somebody else will be helpful for someone.
You know, I just, you never know how much muscle is underneath all of that. And You never know how strong you can get, how quickly, but pushing that progressive overload was just always, I was very, very hyper focused on that. And I guess just you always worry like what's gonna happen at the end of that? What's gonna happen when you get that competition lean? Like, am I gonna have the glutes I want? Am I gonna have the arms I want? And for me, a lot of the am I gonna have the quads I want? I was really worried about quads early, early, early
Mhm.
on.
Yep, I remember.
And so I was just determined to do everything by the book and trust the process because I didn't want to look back and have any like, what if I had done A, B, C? Any regrets?
Mhm.
So it was just a full, like, complete trust in the process and like dive in head first and working really hard at lifting very heavy. I was really, really proud that like I got my back squats to 185, awesome.
So you found that, like, focusing on your strength during that period versus necessarily what your body looked like right then was helpful to kind of, no pun intended, but, like, muscle through that.
Oh, I loved the way my body looked. It's
Mhm.
funny because I look back at pictures and I remember not liking how I look in pictures, but
Mhm.
looking in the mirror, I was happier with my body almost more so than ever before, which is so
Mhm.
weird because I could tell like I've never had this shape before. I've never had muscle before.
Mhm.
Um, I have ulcerative colitis, and before this, it was always very, very hard to get any shape on me. I was always just a twig and not in good
Mhm.
ways. It was a
Mhm.
sickly kind of thing. And getting my health under control, getting my mental health under control, and learning how to build muscle was just like completely groundbreaking for me
Mhm.
and just so exciting. I was so just happy. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, but I love that. I love hearing that because so many women, especially that, we talk to, don't want to go through that part. They want to skip right over the part where you have to gain weight. And for most people, which I'll talk a little bit more about my kind of opposite experience to yours in a bit, but it's kind of it's uncomfortable to gain weight past a certain point for a lot of people, especially women. And they want to just skip right over that and just get to the shredded part. And there is no amount of times I can say it. If you don't do that part, you will not be shredded because there ain't nothing there. There's nothing to shred to. It's just not there. And you're going to be disappointed, but it's a hard
I was
sell.
so happy just having a butt
Yeah.
for the first time because everyone my entire life would always tell me, you just have no butt.
Hmm.
This
Well,
was no
joke's
longer
on
the
them
case.
now. Now you're a
Yeah,
bikini pro. So,
yeah.
oh man, that's awesome. And your starting calories were, so you had refeeds also all the way through, right? I can't remember. Did we do a full diet break at any point? I don't think we had to, really.
Nope.
Um, yeah. So starting calorie low days were 1732 and high days were 2030 calories. And then the absolute lowest that you got was 1605 during the week and 1952 on the weekends. Like, to put that in context for other folks, that's nuts. Like, that's really high, especially for somebody in the bikini category, which of all the categories is kind of like the smallest category. In natural bodybuilding, the differences in weight between the categories is like basically nothing, but theoretically, it's the smallest category. So, I mean, I know you're not short. You're 5'7", 5'8"?
Right. Almost 5'8", but
Okay.
5'7".
So, yeah, I mean, it's not like you're 5'2", but still, I'm 5'7". And, I was telling you before we even started this call, like, you ended higher than I started my prep in 2018. So, our weights actually were not that different, though, like, our physical weights, which is why I think this is such an interesting conversation. We're almost the exact same age. I think you're a year younger than me, right?
Right.
We're the same height.
Mhm.
And your highest weight was 141. My highest weight was 146. And your stage weight was 122. And my stage weight was 124. So, like, very close.
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, but the preps themselves, like, look there are a few similarities because, like I said, we have the same philosophy, but they look totally different. Like, so I started with a really aggressive 3 weeks, I think because, like, at that point, like, you're not hungry yet, you're just coming off of, like, at a surplus, and like you said, your body is just ready to start losing weight at this point. So I started really aggressive, but if we skip that 3 weeks there when we got to like the real sort of numbers, I started at 1510 during the week and the weekends were 2000. But I ended the absolute lowest days that I had, which I didn't have many of them, but I had a few, were 1196. Um
Mhm.
I do think my weekends stayed around 1800, which is pretty okay. But I mean, oof. Anything sort of below 1500 and I am not feeling great.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the other thing is like I didn't end up as lean as you. Those weights may be the same, but I mean maybe if you stuck us in a DEXA, maybe the number of percent body fat would be similar, but it did not look the same on me as it did on you. Like your abs looked like they were shrink wrapped to your body.
Now that's genetics.
Yeah.
My entire life, I told you, growing up being a beanpole, having twigs for arms and legs, I
Mhm.
always had abs.
Well, I guess that's a benefit of being a beanpole. Um, but so I grew up the opposite. Like you grew up active and very, very thin, albeit for probably health issue related reasons, because ulcerative colitis makes it harder for your body to absorb the food you're actually eating, right?
Mhm.
I imagine that was probably part of it, even though you didn't have symptoms when you were like a kid, right?
Oh, I did.
Oh, okay. You just didn't get diagnosed until you were older.
I was 19.
Hmm.
The symptoms didn't get severe enough to get diagnosed because you don't really get diagnosed until there's blood.
Gotcha. I remember you telling me that conversation, but I don't think I realized that you had some of those symptoms when you were a kid. I guess
Oh
also
yeah.
if you're a kid, how do you even know you're having those symptoms if that's all you've ever known, you know?
Well, it's funny. My mom will tell stories like now that after we learned about the ulcerative colitis, my mom was like, so many things are making sense because she used to have to take me to the emergency room as an infant, screaming, crying, not normal infant screaming, crying. Because
Mhm.
and then doctors would take x-rays and they'd be like, she is just extremely constipated. And
Right.
that's like the sort of the first thing that happens in the whole stream of, what it takes to get a flare.
Mhm.
So,
Interesting. Which brings me I mean, this wasn't even something I was going to talk about, but like you didn't have any of those flares during prep, right?
no, I'm on a wonderful medication right now and just eating so many whole foods and eating such a
Mhm.
balanced diet and having stress so low. It just when all the ducks are in a row, I can control it. It's not a problem. It's completely in control of my life, and that's been the whole way through this prep. Thank goodness.
Yeah, because that's actually really common in prep. Like once you pass a certain point, like some degree of constipation creeps up in almost everybody because you're just eating so much less, There's just it's moving through you slower. So that's kind of like amazing that that didn't happen at
Well,
all.
I did get a little constipation right before, what was it? I think my second.
Mhm. I remember us talking about that. But I mean it was like a day, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah. Usually it's like I always joke like my clients like if it they always start like, "Okay, I know this is TMI, but," and I'm like, "Oh, just you wait, honey. You are going to be talking to me about your bathroom habits every week.
Yeah.
Don't don't worry." But yeah, no, that's really cool that that didn't happen. I never have the like crazy digestion problems that some other people have on prep. But still, as a vegan that eats a lot of whole foods, you're used to going pretty regularly and like towards the end of prep, it's like maybe every other day or something instead of like some of my clients are like, I go like 3 times a day. And I'm like, that will change.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think, my hydration hadn't changed, but I think at the end, it just takes so much liquid fluids for your body to continue breaking down fat. And there at the end, that's what was happening. Like, the scale wasn't moving, but I was still burning fat. And I think I just got so dehydrated at the end
Mhm. Yeah,
that no
because
matter
also
how much I drank, I couldn't keep up with it.
and when you have much fewer carbohydrates than your body is used to having, like, you can be drinking a lot of water, but not, like, holding on to a lot of it, like,
Mm,
that and the electrolytes, but carbohydrates are one of the things that make you hold on to some water in your body, and, yeah, water just absolutely goes through you, literally.
yeah. That's actually
Um
why I started having more soups as the prep went on in an attempt to help me absorb more fluids.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good idea. I, uh I usually just keep my salt pretty high all the way through because if I don't, I will faint. My blood pressure is normally low, get, like, really lean and very conditioned from so much movement, and it's, like, the kind of blood pressure that scares the doctors at that point.
Yep.
So, salt is, like, my very, very good friend all the time.
That's
Um
funny because I used to have that problem when I was much younger in my 20s.
Mhm.
But after I started building, I got my blood pressure went into normal ranges. And then as I got lean these times, they haven't dipped back down to those like too low, scary
Mhm.
levels. So it's
Yeah.
almost like bodybuilding got rid of that for me.
That's pretty cool. Um, didn't do that for me, but that brings me to talking about cardio a little bit. We never like put in any formal cardio for you, which
Because I
is
fought it.
also yeah, we because I started with it and like a low amount, like 1,000 calories a week, and as it turned out, we just didn't really need it. Um, but also quite unusual to go through a whole prep without like formal cardio. But I mean, I think it can be done because even looking at this prep, this was kind of similar between me and you. Mine was steps all the way through, like just steps, no added cardio until like late July. I started
Mhm.
adding some in and it was like 20 minutes of like lower medium steady state a few times a week. It was not much,
Mhm.
whereas a lot of people kind of start there, but I think part of the reason that so many people end up having to start there is because of how much cardio they're doing in their off season, which is tricky because cardio is good for your health. So it's a good idea to keep some in. But when it comes to bodybuilding specifically, it can kind of be setting you up for, okay, well, if you start here, you're going to have to end here. And
Mhm.
so I always try to keep my cardio low in a definitive bulk or build or leading up to a prep. If it's just like regular life, keep it in. But yeah, I also kept mine as steps for the most of it.
FYI, I was doing 10,000 steps a day.
Mhm.
I don't think we actually mentioned that.
No,
Um,
no, you're right.
and that was, yeah, the entire time. Now, at first, I was really good at well splitting it up in the day, but at the end there, or really about halfway through, it would reach like 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and it would be like, oh, I have 2,000 steps. Let me just
Mhm.
get on either my elliptical or my uh, treadmill. Well, actually, Carson's treadmill. When I'm over at
Mhm.
Carson's house, there's a treadmill that
Mhm.
folds under the sofa. And when I'm at my place in Yorktown, I have my really nice elliptical that I use. And that's it. And I wasn't tracking heart rate or anything
Mhm.
because I despise that. I was very, very anti cardio. I was
Mhm.
even to the point where I was like, Danny, if we're gonna do like cardio, like I would rather buy a weighted vest
Mhm.
and continue walking with weights than
Mhm.
start cardio. I was desperate. We didn't get
Mhm.
to that point,
No, we didn't.
but
Mhm. And I also think that's a perfectly fine thing to do. Like walking with a weighted vest on or something is super smart, actually. And it
well, I
definitely
saw it
counts
on
as
Ben
cardio.
Carpenter's Instagram. He was
Oh,
talking
yeah.
a study that proved that you can do that. And I was like, all day.
Yeah. It's also really good for your bone health too to do that. It's weight bearing cardio exercise. So Yeah, no, I think that's great. But I think a lot of people are just because I was looking at your steps, yes, 10,000 straight through. Mine was I started at 8,000 and then 3 months in I went to 9 and then 2 months later to 10 and then 2 months later, then we started to add in regular cardio. And that would be in addition to my 10,000 steps. So it really depends on who it is that I'm coaching, which way I'm going to go with their cardio. Cause some people are not going to do steps. Like they just don't have the time or they have no interest in tracking the same way you have no interest in like the heart rate thing. They have no interest in tracking their steps. So they're not going to do that. Or um, some people, like if you give them steps, they won't do anything else outside of that at all. Or if you give them cardio, then they're just going to do that much fewer steps without
Mhm.
even realizing it. So there's so many different ways to do cardio and track cardio. Um, yeah, I just think that's very, really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, but back to what I was saying before, like I looked nothing like you at the end. Like I still did very well. I didn't win my pro card. I went out for it. Like of these 5 shows, I went out for it for 4 of them.
Oh.
Devastating. But it is what it is. And a big part of the reason I think is because I used to be like 210 pounds for a while. And it's such a it's such a heartbreaking thing to say, not just to myself, but also to others, because it's such a bummer that somebody can make such an incredible life change. Like their life to lose like 100 pounds, like your life is 100% different and your health is so much better. But when it comes to aesthetics, most of those people are never going to be able to achieve that real, what I call like a shrink wrapped look, you know, like you could be very lean. And I think my DEXA at the end of prep had me like 14%, which is lean. But it didn't look like super shredded, tight to the skin. I still did very well because of my shape. That's genetic, like your abs are genetic. My shape is almost unbeatable on a figure stage, which is why I'm able to do so well. But if when they do that conditioning round, like I'm never going to win that particular round. But I will
Mm.
say to anybody listening, don't let that stop you because there are multiple rounds, right? Like they're not just looking for conditioning. They're looking for muscularity, they're looking for shape, they're looking for presentation. And you might not win one of those rounds, but if you have the other 3, you could walk away winning that class. So, and depending on who's there, you absolutely can win a pro card. It just was not my time. Um, But I think that's an important distinction to make, and I always hate saying it because when you're working with somebody that's in that position where they've lost a ton of weight, they're going to have loose skin. They're just going to, unless they go get it surgically removed, which I did after this prep, actually, just from my stomach and my chest. Thought I'd do it everywhere, and then I realized I don't actually care that much to do it everywhere. But I did place well with that skin, so keep that in mind, folks, if you're in that position. Um, But again, yeah, this is why I get so frustrated when I see kids that are, like people think it's cute to make these little overweight kids. And it's not. Like, I mean, they're cute. Kids are all cute, regardless of what they look like. But like it can very easily set them up to one, be bullied, which is awful. But much bigger than that, I think, is the fact that you can never get rid of fat cells ever. Like once they have grown, you have them forever. Uh, so it's better to just avoid having too many in the first place. And then of course the skin issue, like blah blah blah. So um, yeah, I just think it's different. And a lot of this is something I've noticed anecdotally. Um, Folks that grew up as bean poles, like you said, they are like the perfect candidates for bodybuilding
Mm.
comparatively to everybody outside of that category. Um, I don't know why. Probably because they do not like really have the propensity to put on too much body fat. So, but also they're hard gainers, so harder for
Mm.
them to build muscle generally, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
There's also, being a beanpole, like you said, but also like you can give yourself even more advantage if you are an athlete during puberty and young adulthood and putting on that muscle while your hormones are just like
Mhm.
basically like you're taking steroids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Without
your body
actually
is just
injecting.
producing them.
Exactly. And so you get that foundation. So that's the next thing that's like, what can we do to make this completely optimal?
Yeah, but it's like, what kid is thinking of that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no kid is thinking of that, but
Maybe the football
now
players, right?
yes, exactly, that's it. I actually mentioned it on the steroids podcast that we did a few weeks ago, like, I, uh I remember taking the drug classes, like, in your health class, and they'd talk about, marijuana does this, and psychedelics do this, and it was a weird class. It was like they were trying to sell me on a good time, really. But by the time they got to the steroids, I was like, why would anybody take a drug just to run faster? Like, I don't understand. And
Yeah.
now it's like that's the drug that those are the types of drugs I see the most now. So weird. But yeah, kids aren't thinking of, oh, well, I don't want to have to deal with poor health for the rest of my life. So maybe I should skip this dessert tonight. Like,
Right.
find me a 6-year-old that's going to do that. Not possible.
For sure.
Yeah. So that that could be a whole other podcast talking about kids and kids' health, and everyone's gonna be like, "You can't talk about it because you don't have kids." I'm gonna be like, "I'm still gonna talk about it."
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I know that this is like really close because we're just coming off the tail end of your prep. Um, and I didn't even ask if you were interested in talking about this beforehand. So if you don't want to, that's fine. But um, coming out of your prep so far, like what has that been like for you?
It's been challenging. Um, I guess just because I was able to get so lean. I didn't get a DEXA scan, by the way. I thought about it, but we don't have anything around us that's like they offer DEXAs for athletes. We just
Mhm,
have doctor's offices. I'm too rural, right?
mhm,
But according to like measurements and like doing the math and stuff, body fat percentage was probably about 13%. So
mhm.
however accurate that can be.
Yeah, I think that was probably based on your pictures, I think that was probably pretty close. If you're ever in California, that was just how I got mine done because they don't do them here either. They're like
Mm,
$50 in California, and you could just walk in and get it.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I had that, but it's all
Mhm,
right. I still think it, yeah, like you said, I still think it's pretty accurate. But
mhm,
coming off of that, I'm a person who we all think, we get through competition prep and we think we have the most amount of willpower and control when it comes to those things because you have been so severely restricted for so long. But as soon as, you know, coming off of being that lean, going to the point where it's like, all right, the leash is, a little bit looser. We don't have any goals immediately hovering over our heads. It's like your body takes over and you don't have a choice but to continue eating.
mhm,
That's been the experience, and it is getting a lot better. I'd say, we're 2 weeks out now ish, a little more
mhm,
than 2 weeks out, and I'm just feeling like from the past maybe 4 or 5 days, like, all right, my head is back where it needs to be. But until then, it was very much like, yeah, had probably 2 binges,
mhm.
um, box of cereal kind
Yeah.
of binge. uh,
Mhm.
and it was disturbing, but I just tried to forgive myself, I guess.
Yeah. It is the hardest part. It's the hardest part of prep is actually not prep at all. It's coming out of prep and trying to like reacclimate to like being a normal person again, even if that's a normal person who loves bodybuilding. Like it's still so hard. It's like you said, your body just takes over. It's like kind of like a primal urge to put food in your body immediately. And it's fascinating to me because of the amount of discipline and willpower that you're able to exercise up until that point, and then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, game over. Um, oh, it is so hard. It is nice to start feeling better, like every day. Pretty much, you wake up and you feel a little bit better, and you feel a little bit better.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, your weight hasn't like jumped up like a really high amount in this past couple of weeks. I didn't actually look to see what happened with my weight right after. I mean, I'm pretty sure I remember definitely seeing like low 130s the day after the last show, which would be like a 6 or 7 pound gain, like overnight. Um, obviously that's not real,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
um, but within like a month or so or 6 weeks, that number was a real number at that point. Um, but again, my body yours didn't start suffering until you were like, what would you say, like 125 or so pounds?
Yeah, 125, 124. Really, it might have even been like more like 123 because
Mhm.
again, I didn't actually continue to lose weight at the end. It was more
Right.
just recomping.
Mhm. This is what I find for most people, is that there is a weight. There's a weight that your body hits, and past that point, your body is just like telling you, "Please stop. Please stop doing
Mhm,
this to me. Can we
mhm.
please stop now?" Um, and maybe yours is like 123, 124, or something like that.
I was
Mine
convinced it
seems to
was the
be
number of calories though.
no, nope. Actually, truly, it's not. It has more to do with body fat. Body fat is the number one driver of that.
Mhm,
And which is why when people tell me they want to come out of a prep, but they want to stay super lean, but also they want to feel better, I'm like, you're not going to feel better until we get some body fat back on you. Don't have to go crazy or anything, but we need to get back up to that place where you didn't feel like death during prep. For me, that's usually around 133, which means the remaining 10 pounds I have to lose, which is like half my prep weight, is in that crappy place. And that's
mhm,
just like what my body can tolerate. So if I want to be a bodybuilder and I want to step on stage and be competitive, that is the sacrifice that I have to make. And there's, I would say, more people, well, just based statistically on the United States, right? If we look at the fact that almost 70% of people are overweight, more people go into prep are like me than were like you that were very thin or even a healthy weight and then go into bodybuilding. So
for
it's
sure.
not for everybody. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to say, like, bodybuilding competitively, it's not for everybody. And don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're going through hell, but somebody else seems to be having a really easy time. Some of those factors could very well be your own damn fault, but a lot of them could be completely out of your control, you
Mm.
know? Um,
Yeah,
and
I
also,
made like a reel specifically saying like you don't want to be bodybuilder lean, and here are all the
mhm,
reasons.
mhm. Yeah, it's not, I mean, it looks super cool. Like, don't get me wrong. If I could look like that and not feel shitty, like, I would totally do that.
Right.
But having looked like that many times in my life, I realize I don't actually want to look like that most of the time. And I have a couple of clients that I can think of specifically on my head that had to get to that place to learn they didn't want to be in that place.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll say who they are because they won't care. Alex Payne, who got super, super, super lean, won his first show ever. Um, and he's super muscular. And he actually grew up overweight also and has lost a ton of weight, which is very interesting. So it was like hell for him getting there. And as soon as it was done, he said he felt completely free because now he knew he would never have to wonder, oh, what if I could just look like that? Now he knew what it takes to look like that. And now he can just let it go. He doesn't need to look like that anymore. And
Mhm.
I think that that's really cool. And the other one is Brittany. Brittany Billings on the powerlifting team is also a figure pro. She became a figure pro like on her second show or something, and then was like, "And I'm done. I don't ever need to get to this place again. I'm gonna be a power lifter." And now she's strong as hell. So I don't know. I always feel kind of strange talking about bodybuilding in general because I love it so much, but I also recognize how problematic it can be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, but be careful.
Yeah.
I sound happy and excited, but
Yeah. It's because I do feel like there's a lot of coaches out there that are just like dying to get people on their bodybuilding roster. And sometimes it's people that I don't even know what they're getting into. Like they're just regular gym goers that somebody walked up to them in the gym and were like, "Hey, have you ever considered competing?" And suddenly they're in a prep. And it's like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Mhm, for sure.
I don't know.
I think Carson's going through that a little bit right now,
Mm-hmm.
having
It
walked me through all these competitions. And of course, he's going to all these shows and he doesn't hide his veganism at all. He has all of the goofy vegan t-shirts
mm-hmm.
and he's always got a tank on. So I say t-shirts, they're actually tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And people are constantly asking him, "Do you compete? Do you compete?" And he said, "Oh, actually, no. I'm just here supporting my boyfriend or my girlfriend."
Mm-hmm.
Same. I think my boyfriend. And they're like, "Oh, well, you should compete. You should compete." And he's like, "Well,
You get the bug when you're
yeah,
going out there. A lot of people I know got into competing because they went to some shows.
yeah,
Um, and even myself, like I started coaching bodybuilders before I ever stepped on stage. And I
mhm,
had one show. It was in 2013, like where I had 5 athletes in that show. And I went out there to watch the show. And while I was watching them, I was like, maybe I can actually do this. Maybe I could give it a shot. And that's when I like actually committed to doing it was in 2013.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, you go out to watch other people and I think people have this idea in their heads that everybody is flawless at these bodybuilding shows until they go to
mhm,
one and they realize that's not true at all. Like everybody looks amazing, but there are scars, there are stretch marks, there are unbalanced physiques. There are people who didn't get perfectly shredded or who, don't have the greatest XYZ body part.
mhm.
And it's one thing I do love about natural bodybuilding is, you do see a lot of different people, different ages. Every show has like somebody that's over 60 years old up there just rocking it. And I hope to be that person someday.
No, you're
uh,
totally right. Going to a show and it's human nature. We're going to start comparing, right? And
mhm,
so I don't have my phone on me when I'm backstage in a competition. Like, not until I've at least gone on stage and I have like a long break will I go and even check it.
mhm.
Um, but I'll come back every time and I'll have like 12 messages from him. Oh, I could totally be up there with these men's classic physique,
Mhm,
or men's physique, and so he'll just compare himself and he'll see himself up there.
mhm.
But you're right, going to a natural show, seeing like people's legitimately natural physiques, it's beautiful to me,
Mhm,
because it's not what you see all over the internet, really. It's
mhm,
not what you see on people's Instagrams. It's like, oh, this is what real bodies look like.
mhm.
And I love seeing how different everybody is. And it's clear that people are natural,
Yeah. Yeah, I
and it's
mean, don't get me
inspiring
wrong.
and it feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good. I mean, there are some shows that you go to. Mister America is a great example. The pro show at Mister America is like jaw-dropping,
Yes.
like truly jaw-dropping. I don't wanna say those are like normal physiques because 'cause they're not, but they are natural physiques. Um, but what we see on the internet usually are NPC competitors or IFBB competitors that, 95% of the time they are not natural. And then Instagram photos do not translate to the stage. And that is something I try to tell people that have maybe gotten a little like insta famous because they look really good or they have great abs or whatever, they post sort of like influencer shots online that get a lot of attention, so they think they'd be great at bodybuilding.
Mhm.
But there's nowhere to hide on that stage. There's no angle they're not gonna see. Like, so
Yep.
you have to have it from every angle. And you don't see that on Instagram, you know?
That was my biggest lesson learned from being backstage with these competitors, even at my pro show. Seeing people backstage, you think, I don't I don't know how well so and so is going to do, or so, that person, that person, that person. but they get on stage and they know how to pose and they know
Mm.
how to, stand to get the light to hit them right. And it's like a completely different person.
Mhm. And that's me backstage. I'm that person that nobody is worried about backstage usually. So first of all, I cover up, I put my headphones on, I don't look at anybody until the last second. Um, but I know I'm that person, and I'm grateful for that because I don't wanna get mean looks from people backstage all day. Um, but yeah, some people just kind of look like normal fittish people, and then they get on stage and they just pop, and they have that sort of like what I just refer to as like an it factor. It's very hard to explain what it is, but it's like a presence, it's a confidence, it's a look. Like you need to be able to look at somebody on stage and say, "Oh, that is bikini," or "Oh, that's figure. That's what figure is supposed to look like," or et cetera, whatever the category is. It can't just be like, "Oh, that person is the sum of a lot of good body parts." Like that's not enough.
And
So,
once you see them in the lineup and seeing like, is every, what group of people are similar, what group of people are sort of the outliers. And that's why the shows can go any which way. And it's
mhm,
shocking, but I feel after after a certain amount of time, I just feel like it's sort of about taking turns. You have the people that sort of place very well at shows, and whatever the set of judges are looking for, they'll choose, and you just sort of take turns on who's placing the best.
mhm. Yeah, and especially in the natural circuit, like, it's not that big. Like, you're going if you compete multiple times in the same season or even, like, for several years in a row, you're gonna see the same faces. You're gonna be up against the same people over and over and over again, and sometimes they might beat you, and sometimes you might beat them, and I think that's pretty cool, and I think it usually means the judges are, like, doing what the judges ought to be doing, which is nice. Um So yeah, let's see. Is there anything else that we wanted to touch upon here in terms of preps? Anything else you wanted to mention about them?
I don't think so. Not without getting into nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I guess another thing I wanted to say is just if somebody is having a quote unquote smooth prep, don't get that mistaken for like it's easy for them because once somebody hits that place of where you turn that corner, that's the only way I can describe it. Everybody feels the same kind of shitty.
Yes.
So even if they're eating more than you, so for example, um, there have been several people that I've known that are eating more than I am, but they turned that corner. They are past that point with their body, and it doesn't matter if they're eating more food than me. Hunger is only relative to that person. Like somebody could be starving on 2,000 calories, and somebody could be feeling fine on 1,600 calories. So just if a bodybuilder in prep is telling you like, ugh, I feel like I got hit by a truck, like it's hard. Like they're in that place, even if they're eating what you think should be an easy amount of food. In a non-bodybuilder world, um, people are shocked at how much I eat. Like
Oh,
especially in the off season, if I'm eating 2,300 calories, I feel like I can't believe you eat that much. And I'm just like, what? And then, in prep, I'm eating 1,600 calories or 1,500 calories, and they still think that's a lot. And I think I'm ready to eat my arm off. Did you experience that too?
Oh, every time I go out to eat with anybody, there's always some kind of comment like, "Oh, there's no way you're gonna be able to finish that." I'm like,
Mm.
I'm like, "I could order another plate, actually."
Yeah. Or like,
Um,
I can't believe you can get away with eating that. It's like,
yeah.
I'm
I
not getting
say,
away with
and I
it.
just say, "If you lift heavy."
Mhm, yeah.
Because
Yep. Yep. It
it's
is
true,
true.
that's what I really wanna make some content about is, like, you wanna eat?
Hmm.
Feel so sorry for these girls who are just eating nothing to try and lose weight or doing
Hmm.
all this cardio, all this running. Running is a big thing around here. We have a lot of runners. So we go out and we see that and it's like, oh, if I could just get you lifting.
Hmm. Well,
You
you
take
actually you just made me think of like a big thing actually that I think is worth talking about. The lead up into a prep. Like you if ugh, I don't even know where to begin this. You can't just always be dieting and expect
Yes.
it to work. It's not going to work if you are always dieting. Like, give your take on this.
Yeah. We spend our lives dieting. And I feel like for most people, in their, at least most women in their 30s, they reach this point where it's like, all right, now my dieting history, my previous habits are no longer working for me. And that's the time when they start to look for help. But
Mhm.
they're still, continue the process of just diet, 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 diet. And your metabolism is going to be so downregulated. And you're just making it harder and harder for yourself. You don't ever give yourself a break. You don't
Mhm.
ever eat at maintenance and more activity, doing something like lifting, you know, doing
Or
something you
even
love.
lifting and still not eating enough, which
Mhm.
that's what I did. So I almost followed that exactly what you just said when I was 19, like I literally had no idea what I was doing. That's when I lost basically lost almost 100 pounds from through extreme dieting, and lots of cardio because that's the only thing that made sense, to me at the time. After that, so I reached my quote unquote goal weight, hated how it looked because it looked nothing like I thought it was going to look. And that's when I started lifting, but I was still eating very little. And it's my probably my only like fitness regret is that I didn't right at that point start eating like a decent amount and just
Mhm.
stop trying to get smaller and smaller because that was like the newbie gain phase, right? And I kind of blew it. I kind of blew it on just dieting through it. And I mean, I had my own different kind of newbie gain phase later, but
Yeah. So I was thinking, I'm like, you can have it again.
yeah, but it was just like, probably like 2 years of me lifting, so I had really good form, but I wasn't really strong, and, I was probably eating, like, under 1,500 calories, and being like, "Why isn't my body changing?"
Mhm.
Because it couldn't, like, it literally couldn't change.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We have
big
so many
regret.
conversations just about, women trying to lift heavy, especially for lower body,
Mhm,
right? Trying all these new fitness programs like month after month, you know, you don't get the opportunity to start to really, really lift heavy. Like try to get to lifting your body weight, in your squats and your deadlifts
mhm,
and go up from there. That's when you see those gains come. And
yeah,
it's like, and it's shocking and it's beautiful and it's so much, you gain so much confidence. And it doesn't have to be weightlifting. You can figure out what kind of sport, what kind of activity,
mhm,
you're happy with.
yeah, but if you wanna have muscles, like, you're gonna have to do some kind of resistance training,
Right.
something. Like you can't just do like just yoga or just Pilates and eat very little and expect to actually build like substantial muscle and then be disappointed with yourself when you don't have the kind of look that you wish you had, but you're like not doing the things that you need to do to get there. Katya actually described it as like you wouldn't hire a construction crew to come build a house, but not actually buy the lumber and the stuff that you need to do it. When you're lifting really heavy, but you're not feeding yourself enough, that's exactly what you're doing. You cannot get the job done, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Well, that's something else to talk about. I didn't really feel like strength was going down until peak weeks
mhm.
started happening.
Mhm.
I was able to maintain and I feel like even gain definition in a lot of my prep. So it was going very, very smooth. And then peak week hit and things were just like
Mhm. Yep.
completely different story. Again, you turn that corner, all
Yep.
of a sudden you reach the point where it gets hard and there go your gains.
Yeah. The good news is they do come back quickly afterwards. But yeah, my prep, I don't remember exactly when it happened, probably right around that point that I turned that corner. But I know for a fact that by the end of my prep, my squats, my barbell back squats, my working sets were what my warm up weight was at the beginning. So
Mm.
135 was like a warm up for me at the beginning of prep. 135 was my absolute gun to my head, do as much as you can working weight at the end of my prep. Ugh. And I remember being so pissed about it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and that's like you're like sitting down in between sets, like bargaining with God, like, please, God, just let me get through this.
Yeah. For me, it was bargaining just to go into the gym.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it would end with me taking a little power nap
Mhm.
before, like get into the parking lot, be like, I want to leave, I want to go home. And I'd be like, all right, what if you take a nap right now?
Yeah. It's so weird. And like out of context, everything we're saying sounds super disordered.
I know. That's why
But
you don't want to be a bodybuilder.
exactly. That's why you really, really need to consider, do you want to do this? But I think a key of it not being disordered, right? One of the main keys of it not being disordered is that when it's done, you can turn it back off. All that like sort of like neuroses and um just absolute feeling like crap, like that will, if it doesn't get turned off, it's going to get turned way, way, way down once the prep is over.
Mhm.
And that's the important part. Because if you try to stay in that 100% prep mindset all of the time, that's not a healthy place to be mentally, I think.
No, you're not even going to be able to have a job because you can't, your brain doesn't work.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
literally just feel like an idiot the entire time. You do things in prep that you never thought you would have done before. And it's like, why am I, how could I be such an idiot? How could
Hmm.
I let this happen? How could I lose this? How could I drop that?
Oh, I remember this wasn't in 2018. This is probably in like 2015 or 2016. I remember leaving my apartment and going outside to my car, and the keys were in it. It was on and the door was open. Like I had literally just like walked out of my car and gone. And this was like not my house in my driveway. This was in like an apartment complex parking lot. And it had been that way like overnight.
Mhm.
So, oh yeah, so many things. Like your brain just, it's like two little brain cells rubbing together trying to do the
Mhm.
job of a full brain.
I shared this with you, but I'll share this on the podcast. I dropped my trophy, broke my trophy.
Mhm.
That's how, like, and I am the most careful person in the world. I keep touching my mic. Hopefully, I'm not missing a
Mhm.
sound. Um, I'm normally the most careful person in the world. I never drop things. I never break things. My phone is always like freakishly perfect with like a pitiful little case on it.
Mhm.
I dropped my trophy and broke it.
Mhm. So
Tears
upsetting. Yeah.
ruined my day.
Right? And then you're so emotional about things that normally wouldn't make you that emotional. I wish I could think of a really good example, but oh god, when me and Giacomo were prepping at the same time, which this is the reason we don't do that anymore, like one of us would say something that would, it would just be like so small, but it would get under the other person's skin so much that it would just be this super bitchy, passive aggressive little argument, and we'd have to just like go into our separate rooms and and like in a fed state again. We're like, that was so stupid. What were we even fighting about? And it's like we are just fighting about the fact that we were hungry. Like that's literally it.
Yes.
So, but yeah, one of us needs to have the like mental wherewithal to run the business while the other one is dieting.
Right.
That's the other reason. So anyway, I think this was a good podcast. I think if we go on longer, it's gonna be like 2 hours. But um yeah, I think this was really good. If you guys have any questions about prep, I know a lot of people ask us like, why do you, if you have so many bad things to say about it, like why do you guys do this? We did record a podcast answering that exact question several years ago, but maybe we should redo that podcast at some point because
Yeah,
it's very hard to explain, but there are a lot of awesome things that do come out of bodybuilding as well.
for sure.
Um, all right, well, I'm going to wrap us up. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. If you are interested in any kind of coaching, whether that's lifestyle coaching or bodybuilding coaching, you can find us at veganproteins.com. We have an application on there. You can hit the contact button. You can just email us, coach@veganproteins.com. Feel free to follow Alice on Instagram. It's Vegan Proteins Alice. Pretty easy to find there. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. We love getting requests for the podcast. So, once again, my name is Danny,
I'm Alice.
and we will talk to you soon.